Hello and welcome to the Mindful Men podcast, a show inspiring men to be mindful about their lives. Each week, we'll dive into a range of topics that matter to men and hear from everyday people doing extraordinary things. So if you love the show, please give it a 5-star rating and share it with your mates. Now, before we get into this week's episode, please note that some of the content may trigger you. And if this happens, please reach out to your support networks. It's really important. If you can't get enough of Mindful Men, head over to our website. It's www.mindful-men.com.au. Find the show notes and the links to our socials there. But for now, sit back, relax, and let's get mindful. G'day guys, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Men podcast. I'm your host Simon Rinnie, and today we're getting mindful about epigenetics and men's health, and helping us figure out what this all means is Chris Barnes from the Gold Coast. How you going, Chris?
Absolutely brilliant, Simon. Thanks for having me, mate.
No, thanks for coming on. And it's been a little while since we last caught up. We did meet each other at the Health and Nutrition Summit in Noosa.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was a few months ago and we both had stalls there. So I'm really keen to explore everything that you had on top of your stall table, and in terms of what is biohacking, epigenetics, genetic testing kits and all that type of stuff. We're going to talk about this. And I think this is going to be a really unique and cool conversation about helping guys to essentially optimize their health. I really believe that mindfulness isn't just about what's in the mind, but it's the whole of body. It's about conscious living and working out what's the best way to get the best out of ourselves as well. So really excited to have you on. But to introduce you to the Mindful Men community, you are a biohacking, holistic epigenetic coach. So we're going to explore what all that means today. And you help people to slow the aging clock, lose weight, and essentially improve their overall health and well-being. But in addition to that, you're also a beach-loving father of 3. And we've just been having a chat off there about fatherhood. And you live in a great part of the world, the Gold Coast. I'm a few hours north of you on the Sunshine Coast. What is it about the beach that you absolutely love?
Oh, thank you, mate, for that introduction. Look, I pinch myself most days. I'm fortunate to be within 5 minutes from Tallebudgera or Currumbin beaches, like the best beaches in the world. There's definitely a energetic tie for me. Like every time that I go to the beach, I swim in the ocean, I sit on the sand, any layers of stress or anxiety or worry that I might be carrying throughout the day just strips away, right? Like, because at our core, we're energetic beings and we're so responsive to the different energies in our environment. And there's nothing more profound than like in nature or at the beach with all those different energies and exchanges happening with our physiology and the water and the sand. Look, it's just a magic place for me. I get to spend all of my weekends there. My kids do surf lessons at Kira on Saturday mornings. We do nippers on Sunday. So it's like my charge point, right? Like I get down there and connect and I walk away just a new person, mate. So I really am blessed to be in like the location we are, because it's definitely part of my kind of connection to my source and my soul, right? Like beach. I can't surf yet, but it's on my action list. The kids can definitely surf way better than I can at the moment, but it's definitely a goal of mine, so I can get out there and tackle some waves with them as well.
Have you always lived near the beach? Because I love the beach as well for that exact same reason. And I've actually taken up surfing this year as a 40-year-old. So it's actually a really cool thing to do up here on the sunny coast. But when I'm near the water, I just feel relaxed and calm, and I love hearing the waves, seeing it, love putting the feet in the water, love being in the water. But I've spent a lot of, some of my career away from the beach, like inland Australia as well. I'm interested to know, when you're away from the beach, how are you feeling from a mind and body perspective?
It's interesting. I didn't grow up with the beach. I grew up inland, country, northern New South Wales, Northern Rivers, so country boy, a small place called Kyogle, which was absolutely beautiful place to grow up as a kid. Like, it was green, it was lush. And look, I loved the nature and the bush, but I do feel different when I'm in the bush compared to the beach. I would spend every Christmas at Ballina for Christmas holidays and would spend 6 weeks there, and I would just literally spend every moment of my time either out in the boat fishing with Dad, or I would just go out by myself and snorkel just by myself, just in the water and just seeing fish. And it was just like I was so connected to my environment. I never knew about mindfulness or meditation or energy or frequency. I didn't, I was a fit kid. I was playing sport and loved my footy, but I definitely wasn't as aware to the benefits of this. But yeah, it was my place, right? And yeah, I do feel the difference. Like I live, I'd say, kind of surrounded by the bush, and I love it, and it's relaxing and zenful for me. But it doesn't compare to being in the waves and getting washed with the energy of the waves. And yeah, so there's definitely a unique, and we know that both those locations have a different frequency, right? They emit a different frequency, a different vibration, and some vibrations are more conducive to harmonizing our body and our vibrational signature and uplifting it, or bringing it down as well. So, for example, being around like a toxic or negative work environment or a toxic person, right? You don't feel great. You feel rattled. You feel shaken inside. So that's the difference. I think we need to get more in the environment and around all positive people that harmonize our vibration to feel better, right? And it has such a, I think, systemic effect on our well-being, our thoughts, our feelings, and our stress levels, right? So the more we do that, the better we feel, the better we become, right?
Absolutely. And so I'm interested in your perspective now. Like, how does that then play into your fatherhood? We've got young families, relatively young families, and it takes a lot of effort to be a dad, to be a husband, and to run a household of little beings as well.
It really does.
So, like, tuning into either the bush or the beach as well, that energy and filling our cups up. How important is that for you as a father?
It's 100% essential, and it needs to become like one of the highest priorities for any dad, for any mum, because it is. There's so many. Like when you think about it, just think of your body as just a bucket of energy, right? And all these outputs, right? You're constantly thinking of all the things to do with school and getting the kids prepared for extracurricular things or work. Whether you're the chef in the house, I'm the chef in the house. I do all of the breakfasts, the lunches, the meals. That's an output. I love cooking, but it's still on, right? And there's still just an exchange of energy. And if you don't look after and protect the exchange of that currency, putting energy back in to your body. Paul Chek, a great holistic mind, is very big on energy out, energy in, working to balance all those outputs, right? So things like meditation, breath work, grounding, connecting to whether it's to the grass out in the back of your house or at the beach or walking in the bush. All these are putting energy back into the body, eating the right types of food, catching yourself if you're thinking on negative tangents and negative loops, because it's one of the areas which you would probably know so well with your podcast, Men's Health, that when we're in that state of constantly being on, it's energy. Our brains just chew up so much energy. And I went through it for so much of my life where my mind's just constantly on. It's always thinking of the next adventure I want to do, the next business, entrepreneurial thing, or just constantly thinking. And then you're just like, wow, I'm really tired. I'm exhausted. You wake up one day and going, I'm knackered. And it's like, hey, there's a lot of time where I'm just on and I'm not off. Just being in Boston, my son on the drives down to school, he'd like, Dad, what are you thinking about? I'm like, mate, I'm not thinking of anything. He's like, you're not thinking of anything. It's important to be still, right? Not thinking of anything. Give your mind a rest. There's a really smart physicist called Emmett Goswami, big in the quantum realm, and he says, "Doobie doobie doobie doo." His phrase. So you do be. So you're doing, but then you need to be. Just shut off and let the great thing play out, right? Like all those things that just kind of pop into your mind or pop into manifestation happen, rather than just trying to constantly will things into existence or constantly thinking of things, right? So it's a really big balancing act. So sorry, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but yeah, to get back to your question, it's so important to get enough sleep to charge up those batteries so you can be present and not stressed and agitated and triggered when our little beautiful gems just be themselves, right? And they're just being kids, right? But we get stressed and wound up and agitated and hot and low on energy, and then we just get triggered into our old patterns, right? I know for a fact when I'm calm and I'm doing the work, I get up in the morning, I do a meditation, or I go to the gym, or I just have a bit of stillness in the morning. It's really important for me to get up and have some stillness in the morning. If I get up and I'm just straight into just full on craziness, it really just throws me off. So that's a strategy I need to implement and manage. And it might be different for you and it might be different for somebody else, because we are also uniquely different in how we react and respond to the environment. But at the source of it, energy out, energy in, are you balancing it? Are you go, go, go? Or are you making time for yourself so you can be the best dad, the best husband, and the best version of yourself?
I really love that, because I've been really conscious of this the last few months, and got to get you out on a surfboard, because once you're out on that surfboard, it is the ultimate just being, because you're sitting there, you're not worried about anything else except for the wave behind you and where you're going to position your board, and then also those moments of calmness when there's no waves crashing, you're just out the back and you're just watching the world go by. Like I was out on the board just this morning and just really enjoying being out there, the warm sun, the warm water, had a mate out there as well, so just having that incidental chat between waves, and then off we go and we get on the board or we just get thrown off by a wave, but then we get back up again, and it's the best just being. We, as you said before, our lives are so much doing, and particularly as small business owners ourselves, like constantly thinking, how am I going to grow this business? How am I going to bring money in? How am I going to put food on the table for the kids and myself, and clothes on our backs and pay our mortgages and all this type of stuff? Finding those moments for ourselves, whether it's a meditation when you get up or a morning walk. I do a bit of walking as well, but also getting out on that board or going to the gym. Whatever we can do to maximize our health and well-being is really good for filling our cups, being there for our partners, our kids, our colleagues, ourselves, etc., etc. And so this is a great tangent coming into our health and well-being. And so you're a relatively fit guy. The last time I stood next to you, I felt like an absolute blimp standing next to you. I've lost a few kilos since. But why is wellness so important for you?
Good question. I have always been surrounded by wellness and fitness. Like the only thing I wanted to do, apart from fish as a kid, was pursue a career in rugby league. So I was just always into training and health optimization. I must admit, I was far from nailing it as a kid because I had a horrendous diet. Didn't have an understanding or an awareness of how important good quality food is. So I'm talking Pop-Tarts for breakfast and your typical sad diet, your standard Australian diet of cereals. And yeah, it was yuck. But I also had a fascination with, how do I bring out the best in my body? And so there was always a fascination with supplements and herbs and things that might just give me a bit of an edge, whether it was cognitively or on the field playing footy. So there was an innate affinity with that space. But it wasn't until I started my career in the health and fitness industry and I started just loving that space and helping people and just, researching more and more. But I guess the biggest area that really ignited that for me was with my dad, who passed away at 65. He retired, moved to the Gold Coast, had a bout of cancer, went through nearly 10 years post-cancer. And I'm like, Dad, you've got to get off the couch. You've got to get up and move. It's so important. Dad's lifelong fitness would have been a game of golf on Saturdays and then to the pub with his mates and stuff. So it was probably so typical for men then and may still be very typical for a lot of people out there, just not moving enough, not eating the right types of diet. So I feel that Dad passed away really suddenly in the gym when I was trying to get him back into training. He had a rupture in an artery, which, was really abnormal. But to lose a dad relatively young, and then just to see my 3 children come into this world, and like for them to not have a connection with him, but also for him not to connect with them, just really made me so aware of how much emphasis there is on us to be that change, to eat better, to move better, to look after ourselves, so that we don't get to a position where we're 60 or 70 and we've got our body riddled with kind of disease, or we just haven't looked after it enough. And then we've got like a window of 5 or 10 years to enjoy. Like it's not right, because what we know now, and in the space which I know we're going to chat about with aging, we've got the potential to thrive right up until our last days, right? If we look after ourselves, our mind, like heaven forbid, like something strikes us out early, but when it comes to our health, our body has the ability to regenerate, to heal, to slow down the aging process if we provide it with the right nutrition, the right environment. So I'm just so fascinated with that space now. And for people, especially men, but for women as well, just to take ownership of that and know that we're so powerful in that space if you provide it with the right tools. And you want to be around, right? You want to be here to experience everything, the wondrous beauty that this life has to offer. The kids, to watch them grow, for kids to grow up without a mum or a dad because they were wiped out too soon because they just didn't have the awareness or take the time to look after themselves, and they hit 50 or 60 and then have a heart attack or something. It doesn't have to be that way. And there's just a real desire in me now just to help people just unlock more potential. And that's where the genetics comes in, and we can really kind of get a better blueprint now for people to understand what's going to be a better way to be for your genome to get better health expressions.
You mentioned there the aging process, and sorry to hear about your father, but it highlights a really, I guess, good point there. Like, he died so young, and we think about the aging process. I remember when growing up and I was a little guy and I thought 50 was a really old age. And I'm like, people retire at 50 or 60. I think it's, getting higher and higher every year now. And then I'm 40 now. And so some of that part of that childhood thinking of 50 is old. I'm like, no, I've still got a lot of life left into me. So is there an aging clock as well? I'm interested in this aging process. Do we have an aging clock? And does that aging clock, does your, I guess, calendar years match your body years or something like that? Can you talk us through that?
There's definitely a number of processes that affect our aging. There would be a clock in a sense, like we're constantly in a state of aging, but we know that if we address some of those elements, we can slow the aging process. So some people are in effect in a state of accelerated aging. We've got incredible minds behind epigenetic clocks and ways to measure the effects of these aging markers on our methylation, on our genome. And once we can measure, we can predict disease and premature death based on some of these changes. And understanding that, we can actually start to wind it back. So we've got our chronological age, right, which is just a number. It just constantly keeps going. But then we've got our biological age, or epigenetic age, which can go forward in sync with that chronological age. It can go forward faster than that, right? So it can surpass our chronological age, and it can also be reversed back. And there's so many exciting things which we can touch on some of them as we go into this as well. But the understanding is that, biological age is the biggest marker. Aging is the biggest risk factor for all chronic disease, pretty much all chronic disease. So it's an area that people should be more mindful of, right? And understanding. And the biggest takeaway is that, yes, we can slow and reverse the biological clock.
Does this mean we can live forever? Like, how old can we live to,
It's a great question, because I know, like, the self-pronounced father of biohacking, Dave Asprey, often references wanting to live to 180. And look, at the rate at which our medical and technological advancements are moving forward, there's so much coming to the market, right? Like, I know he was talking about injections, which a single injection can reverse biological age up to 7 years just in an injection. Like, to do that, normally you'd have to do maybe 6 or 12 months of a really targeted lifestyle protocol with like supplements and nutrition and things to do that. But to be able to do it in an injection, so who knows? Like, whether we want to be able to live forever or just live and thrive for as long as we're here. But like, so we talk about lifespan, but lifespan isn't that great, right? If your health span isn't in sync with it, right? Because we are naturally kind of living longer typically, but those last years are not great for a lot of people. Like, they can't move. They're not feeling great. They're on multiple medications. What we want to do is lengthen that health span, right? And that's what comes from reducing the biological age, reducing the pace of aging, eating in line with your genetics, sleeping in line with your genetics, detoxing really well. All these things are going to make you just handle everything that life throws at you and just feel better, right? Like, so look, some people might want to live forever or for a really long time. I just want to help people live the best that they can for the time that they're here, right, with their families, so they can be active right up until when it's their time to say bye and not have that decline. And for people just to challenge their beliefs as well, that because Like we've been so conditioned to think that, yeah, we're getting older, we can't do that anymore. We're getting older, yep, it's time to kind of just slow down and not move. Like we accrue all this knowledge, right? Like shouldn't we be getting out and enjoying life and teaching like our children, our grandchildren, and just dancing and doing all the things that you love, right? Like all the stuff that lights you up rather than, so I think that mindset, there's a really good study done on the perception of aging, and the people with a more positive perception of aging actually lived considerably longer than the people that were more pessimistic and lacked optimism around aging. So that alone is just powerful for people, and that in your space is so powerful because we know just the power of mindset and belief and what that does to our whole system, right? Because it's constantly informing every cell in our body, our genes to express a certain way, whether it's positively or negatively. And look, everyone can start to think more positively, right, with some conscious effort.
I love how you brought up that it's like that mentality of thriving, not just surviving, and not just crawling to the final finish line. It's actually living with as much vitality and health as possible. I mean, we live in two of the most beautiful parts of the world. Why wouldn't we want to be out every day surfing? I said to my wife the other day, I want to retire early so I can surf every day. It's just lighting me up so much. I want to be out there on each wave and totally. Creating mates and bringing them along as well. Yeah. And it's just, why wouldn't I want to do that instead of sitting at home getting old and just passing time watching daytime TV, which is absolutely rubbish anyway. So I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, Netflix has fixed that up. I was talking about this the other day with somebody. It used to be The Bold and the Beautiful. It used to be Judge Judy, Jerry Springer and all that type of stuff when we were growing up. But now it's Netflix and chill. But
there's so much stuff on there now. But again, like it's so easy to get trapped into sitting on the couch and just vegging out, right, and missing out on like everything that's out here, right, like at the beach and those experiences and just connecting with people. And you mentioned retiring early. I think it's a wonderful concept, but I think just having stuff that you're doing which is so purpose driven, right, to find that balance where you can keep doing that and keep making such a positive impact in people's lives without losing the ability to get out and do that regularly, right? Like, and you should be able to have that balance, right, where you can get up and every morning you go out for a surf and then you jump in and you do this wonderful work or whatever it is that is your trade that really lights you up and then you can make a great living out of. I think that's so important, right, like to get up with that purpose. Because I know when I sold my gym of 13 years and then I knew I was going into this space because I had all this and I had been doing it already. But then I had a little moment there where I just kind of bottomed out. Like I left everything that I knew and I wasn't kind of actively doing this. I was having a break. And I'm like, wow, is this what retirement's like? Is this like, I don't know if this is all it's cut out to be. Just you need to have something really purpose driven, I think, just to keep you going and growing and looking forward to as well.
Absolutely. And the purpose could be maximizing your health.
Totally.
That's why we're here, is to talk about how do men and women, that we do have female listeners as well, how do we maximize our health? So let's get into epigenetics. And for anyone who isn't really sure what it is, and we've touched on it a little bit, but can you describe it for us and for me? Because I really don't know what it is. So lay it out for me like I'm a year 9 student going, why am I doing this course for? Talk us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So epigenetics. So when we talk about epigenetics, epi itself is Latin for above. So, and genetics, we're talking about our genes. So our genes are sections of our DNA. They have information in these sections that pretty much code for our physical and biological traits, right? We get those physical and biological traits from our mum and our dads, right? And epi sits above those genes. So what we originally thought, you've got your genes, your set code of information, and that's it. It could be good, could be not so good. People with risk genetics might worry that, I've got this set of genes, I'm just doomed. Like your genes are definitely not your destiny. When it comes to epigenetics, it's a study of how our behaviors and our environment can change the expression of that gene without actually altering the genetic material itself. So it's really such a fascinating space because we now know that the behavior and the environment. So when we think of those, we think, okay, what are the inputs? Our food, our thoughts, our exercise, our exposure to environmental toxins, all these things are informing our genome and epigenetically changing the way that some of these genes may function for better and for worse. And understanding that puts a lot more ownership on ourselves to provide the right environment, the right thoughts, the right exercise to try and get the best expression, because we know all those really positive diet and lifestyle changes tend to have a more favorable expression. And through the genetics and the epigenetic coaching that we do, we can actually target specific genetic SNPs that might be a little bit problematic. And then we look at, is there a way to kind of cover that up in a sense so that it's not read to express negatively? What could we do there? Could we take a specific supplement that is known to be effective at suppressing or putting like a little Band-Aid over that? It's through a process called methylation, where little stamps are put on that gene section. So some of it is read and expressed, others are not read. And yeah, it becomes such a fascinating world where we can start to manipulate some of the expressions of these so they're more favorable for us. So in a really simple way, epigenetics is just how our gene expression can be changed as a result of our behaviors and the environment.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I feel like I'm in a science class all over again.
I try not to be too scientific. The biggest takeaway is, just understand that, like, your genes aren't your destiny. You can bring out really favorable expressions and better health outcomes by focusing on all the things that we know we should be doing right, like moderate exercise regularly, not sitting down too long, thinking better thoughts, not stressing too much, really making a point of tidying up all the things that we have in our environment that are making us toxic and unwell, because we know drinking out of plastic bottles and wrapping things in plastic and foil are just loading our food and our drink with these toxins that are targeting and they're known impactors and endocrine disruptors, but also on our genetic material, right? They're affecting the way our genes are expressing negatively. So there's a lot we can do to just, get healthier through better gene expression.
So how do we work out which genes that we need to work on? Like, I understand from your website, and this is where we first met, you had some genetic testing kits. Is this what genetic testing kits are used for, to kind of work out what's going on at our DNA structure and then work out where we can focus our energies on?
Yeah, absolutely right, Simon. So in Chris Barnes Wellness programs, we offer a unique genetic test which goes through all the aspects of your health and genetics, from diet, sleep, detox, hormone optimization, inflammation, all these different areas, sensitivities to dairy and gluten and grains and glutamate sensitivity, all the things that people have a lot of issues with, right, with the types of foods they eat, or not understanding why they eat something and just flare up, or they eat something and they just have immense weight gain, because there's all these slight genetic variations that need to be supported uniquely for you or for another listener, because we're not all the same. A one-size-fits-all approach is just not right. There's a lot of universal things that can support, like better exercise, better sleep and things, but then when we really kind of dial down, there are unique variations in people that make them more susceptible to health issues if they eat too much saturated fat, too much omega-6 oils through seed oils, or that some people tolerate them differently, or not enough carbohydrates for weight loss. And other people, if they eat too many carbs, their cholesterol ratios go through the roof. So we can really identify a lot of these aspects based on genetics and then provide a better environment for the client, which is really unique and specific to them. And we find that doing that, it just helps them have a better understanding of themselves and the types of things that will help them flourish and thrive, but also just avoid any potential risk factors, because so many people don't understand this and they eat against their genetics for their whole life and then get to their 40s and 50s and their body's inflamed and they've got pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes and leaky gut and leaky brain and brain fog, and they're toxic, and then like, wow, what's wrong? And then we start to go through and go, okay, yep, these are all the little propensities based on your genetics. And it takes a lot longer to shift it. It's never too late to start, but we know that starting sooner is far more favorable, both from just supporting your health and your system, but also when it comes to the epigenetic changes with the aging and reversing that, and the issues that come with inflammation and health risk. If we start to correct those early, it's far more favorable than doing it when you're 70 or 80 and trying to turn all that damage around, right?
And I can attest to that brain fog, for example. For years and years and years, I had this brain fog attributing to things like mental illness. I've got a long history of that. And some of my genes, I'm thinking back through the generations of my family and going, okay, yeah, I can see this, I can see this, I can see this. Two things that I've done in the last few months who have started to switch things around is one is gave up the booze. So on my 40th, I gave up the booze, and it's almost, as we're recording, it's the 8th of December. So just over 100 days now of being sober, which is fantastic. The other thing I've been doing is intermittent fasting. So I've heard there's some great benefits for lifting the brain fog on that. And I didn't think I could do both of these things because I'd get to the weekend and I'd really be craving a beer, for example, using it to relax and de-stress. But what it was doing was it just continued the brain fog and continued the depression, continued the anxiety. But then the intermittent fasting, I didn't think I could do that as well because I had that standard Australian diet of wake up, have my cereal, have my coffee every day. And I remember every day I'd wake up absolutely ravenous, like ready to just eat the house down. And I always just used to say that breakfast was my favorite meal of the day. But since the last I've been doing this fasting thing for a couple months now, maybe, I don't know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and I've got more energy. I don't get hungry in the mornings now. I can always get to lunchtime. And I start my fasting window around 8 o'clock the night before. So I can get to from 8 o'clock to roughly about 10, 11 o'clock the next day. I'm losing weight. My brain fog is still there, but it's not as heavy as it used to be. I've got more energy. I mean, the surfing's helping as well. But just doing these two basic things, I feel like at a cellular level, like I just feel a little bit younger than 40, maybe 39 and a half or something like that. And so just changing small things, changing those environments, changing our habits can have a big effect on us. So I'm interested, we mentioned another buzzword before, biohacking. And how does this come into epigenetics and doing the DNA testing or the genetic testing? What are we doing to hack our genes or bio whatever framework? Talk us through that as well. I'm interested.
Absolutely, mate. And yeah, congratulations on kicking the alcohol, because it is really such a habitual drug. It is a drug that we have, and we've all grown up. I barely drink these days. I just don't have the desire. It actually doesn't sit well with me anymore. Just, really puts a strain on my liver, and it's a known poison, right? And it's one of the key factors in accelerating aging as well. So if you're drinking alcohol every day, every night, for months and months and months, you're going to prematurely age your system. There's no doubt. Like the data's there. So yeah, it's a huge effort for you to do that. And also the intermittent fasting. Welcome to the world of biohacking.
I'm already in it. Yes.
In essence, like you're taking the ownership on yourself to change your biology, your physiology, and in an essence, that's what we do as a biohacker, right? Like we explore the different avenues and potentials to bring out better physiological changes, better biological changes in ourselves. And you're intuitive, you're seeing kind of what's working for you, what's not working. In a sense, like I do that so much with different supplements, try things. Does it work? Does it not work? Does it tip me over? Does it make me worse? All in a pursuit of bringing out better clarity, better function, better gut health, lowering inflammation, supporting my microbiome. So there's so many different aspects of that. And it's so interlinked with what we do with the genetics, because the genetics and our genes are coding for proteins to bring about a physiological change. We can take things like peptides that act on those mechanisms to release proteins, to release growth hormone in our body, which just has a whole systemic effect on longevity, right? Or epitalon, which is another longevity peptide, which can help target so many aspects of our organ system, but in particular, like the aging process, right? Like our telomeres, it can help kind of slow down the shortening of those telomeres, which is a known vehicle mechanism in the aging process. So biohacking, in a sense, like we're using these therapeutics and wearables like tech. I wear my Aura ring to kind of hack my sleep in a sense to find out how much REM sleep I'm getting, how much deep sleep, my heart rate variability, which is really linked with nervous system health and heart health. So yeah, incorporating all these gadgets and supplements and things in the pursuit of just bringing out our best genetic expression, our best physiological expression for ourselves. And it's a fun space, right? Like you take the ownership on yourself to start to heal yourself, to optimize yourself, not somebody else, because it's all on us, right? Like we, I think, forget. This was one of the things I learned early on in my holistic health studies, that we heal ourselves. Like we go to healers and practitioners, and it's really important that we don't hand over the power to them to heal us. They support the process, and there's definitely a quantum entanglement in that relationship that's so important. But ultimately, we're healing ourselves with the support and the insights that they can help us have. So yeah, at the root, biohacking is just bringing out that best biological expression through all those different avenues: intermittent fasting, cold plunge, breath work, meditation, types of certain diets, keto if you're following keto, or paleo, whatever is suited to your genome, because they're not all right for everybody. And your intermittent fasting, and fasting is a known vehicle to slow down the aging process and lengthen health span and lifespan as well. So that's really awesome.
It's awesome to hear that I'm already biohacking myself.
Yeah, mate, you're a biohacker. One of us.
I'm a hacker now. I love it. I love it. I'm interested. It's like we're in our 40s and I'm not as young as I used to be. I don't have as much hair. I'm just waiting for this biohacking to work on increasing my hair growth, particularly the back of my head, which my kids keep pointing out. But I'm interested, like, why is this important for men to tune into? Like, what is the benefits for men tuning in? In the therapy space where I work, it's trying to get guys in the door and be vulnerable, be open, and explore different ways of just working on their mental health, which then works on their holistic health. From your perspective in the epigenetic space and the biohacking space, why is this important for men to tune into and get on board with?
It's absolutely essential, mate. Like you mentioned, the vulnerability for men, and for so long, I think, like, yes, a lot of guys go to the gym and they train, they want to look and feel strong, but it hasn't really always extended beyond that, right? Like guys need to really, really take better care of themselves, diet, holistic approach, doing all these other things, right? Because if you're just going to the pub and drinking too much alcohol and smoking too much, it's going to cause unfavorable expressions in your genes. Some people are very fortunate. They have a set of genes where they can tolerate the bombardment of alcohol and smoking and partying and all these kind of things for a long time. But majority of people aren't that privileged, right? So it's so important that men really kind of just take the ownership on themselves to provide better diet, lifestyle habits, and habitual behaviors, so that they are healthy and thriving if they are dads. So, because it's not just about them anymore, right? Like it's about their kids, it's about their wife. And so like I see how much my girls and my boy, they just resonate to the dads and to the mums. And for them not to have mums and dads around for a long time to experience and to grow with, I think it's just such a shame. So we need to start doing the work now. 40 is so young. If you can start in your 30s, great. But 40, I'm 42 this year. And like I used to look at my dad, and I still remember his 40th going, man, you're old. But now, like I still feel so young. And that just shows the timelessness of our spirit, right? Our soul, if you call it that. Like our physical body does age, but we can slow that down now. And we can do so much to slow that down and keep it strong, so that we step up and we're that kind of beacon for our families to aspire to. And like it's so important for our children to see that, right? And to model that behavior, to see dad out there going for a run or going for a surf or being fit and vital, eating good food, cooking up healthy meals, respecting your body, right? Like it's a level of respect, I think, that is so influential. Like we get our kids involved in the cooking process, and they're cooking real food, and they may not have the biggest awareness of how important that real food is now, but it is. I know it's imprinting. It'd be different to just going and buying fast food every night and eating ice cream every night. There's a place for that, don't get me wrong, but we just have to create that right space as men so that we can live and grow and thrive. And this understanding yourself. I had a phone call with a client just the other day, and I was like, why are you interested in genetics and epigenetics? He's like, look, I've been to so many doctors, and like obviously he's got some health challenges that he's dealing with, or he just wants to be the best version of himself. He's like, I asked the doctor for some blood work, and he's like, what do you want that for? That's not important. He's like, well, this guy's interested in his blood work. He's obviously watching podcasts and listening to other experts and wants to know some of his markers to see if they're in line with conducive to better health. And it's almost dismissed because it's, oh yeah, we're not going to put that through Medicare or cover that. And he's like, so many people know more about their cars, they know more about their sitcoms and the characters in their sitcoms than they do about their health and maintaining health. And isn't that alarming that we kind of get to middle age and we don't know the right way to eat for ourselves, or what's the right way to sleep, or to mitigate stress? Like this, I just see it as so powerful to have a bit of a resource, a blueprint that people can have. Should be given to everyone at birth, right? Like a birth certificate, here's your genetic blueprint. At least you'll have a foundation on some ways to mitigate some of the challenges you might have. You might understand that you don't methylate really well, which can impact your brain chemistry. So if you're not looking after your diet really well, your dopamine could be really low. So you get up to go, your joy for life and drive to get things done can feel like pushing a boulder up the hill, right? And these are the things that genetics can really help us with, a better understanding of our traits, the way that whether we're more impulsive or whether we might worry about things a little bit more based on some of our genetic SNPs. And once you know that, you can go, okay, this is just some coding, but I can change that a bit, right? Like I can calm my system down. I can meditate more. I can take some nutraceuticals to kind of increase GABA and calm my system down. So yeah, it's a lot we can do, mate. And I really encourage any of our men that are listening to really take it as an opportunity to step up and be more than what you are at the moment. And if there's any mums and females listening, it's exactly the same as you, for you as well. Like, yeah, so much potential to be in greater states of health, right?
That was my next question. I was going to ask you about being that role model for your son so that when he grows up, he's into his health, holistic health and well-being. He's not afraid to say, maybe I'm not doing so well or I'm not okay. Like it's okay to be not okay, because I'm not sure what it was like for you, but for me growing up in the late 80s, 90s, noughties in Adelaide, these weren't discussions that were had. It was to be a healthy male was to be someone who was on the footy track or on the cricket pitch or on the basketball court. And it was someone who didn't talk about any of this type of stuff. It was just like, suck it up, be a man, because that's what it means. It means to be tough. And then go to the pub on the weekend, have your cigarettes and Maccas, and you're fit if you're in a trade, for example. That was health. Then there's multiple generations, and this is what I see in my work as a therapist, myself included as a lived experience therapist. There's these generations of men who don't align with that, who are confused about what it means to be a man. And so this is either coming out as aggression, or it's coming out as depression or anxiety, or it's confusion about their identities and what their values are. And maybe they're too afraid to say anything because they fear judgment and shame. But I'm glad that you're showing the way in your household for your son particularly, so that he can grow up and go, and your daughters and your wife as well, but mainly your son, like to show that it's okay to take control and take responsibility for your health and well-being. This was part of the reason why I gave up alcohol. Was my kids would say, oh, Dad, it's the weekend, are you going to have a beer tonight? Or we'd go out to a function and my kids would say, Daddy, why aren't you driving? Like, because you usually do the driving. Why is Mum driving? And we'd always say, oh, because Daddy's had a few drinks and he's not allowed to. And we're doing that responsible, you can't drink and drive. But then my 40th came around and I thought, okay, it's my 40th. It's a big birthday. I'm going to get some nice presents and stuff like that. The majority of presents I got were beer. and I said to my wife, like, stuff this. Why is this the case? Like, I feel really down about this. And she said, Simon, that's because that's the identity that you have. That's what people know you for. And I'm like, you know what? That was the straw that broke my back. It was like the kids recognizing it, talking about beer, getting all these gifts. And I'm just like, no, I've got to take responsibility here for my own health and well-being. I know from a therapy perspective, I'm always saying it to the guys I work with, stop drinking or lower your drinking. But here I am doing the opposite. And so, no, I'm taking the responsibility now, and I feel great. Like being a biohacker now, like I feel great.
You look great, mate. You look healthy. You look vibrant.
I have energy.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, like, and it radiates, right? Like when you look good, you feel good, you're going to radiate that. And it's not only that, right? Like when you get into like the metaphysical level, like the vibration that you'd be putting out, you're going to be attracting in that signature as well. So you're going to start to bring more of that positive people into your environment, the opportunities as well. And that's a big takeaway for people. The better you start to feel and look and feel in yourself, in your own skin, you're just going to have such a more radiant impact on everyone around you, your family, but also your friends, right? Like, it's so inspiring to see what you've done there. And you should give yourself a massive pat on the back, mate, because it's not easy for people to challenge old patterns, right? And that's why people get stuck in these old patterns for their whole life, and they try and then they revert back to the old drinking and stuff. And it's right, like growing up in a small town, it was like parties and drinking and playing footy. And in the footy culture, you play footy, you play hard, and then you go and you drink hard and you have a massive night out. And that was so much of my life, right? And then it got to a point where I'm like, this is so going against the grain for what I stand for now and what I believe in. If somebody wants to drink, I'm not going to say don't do it, but you got to question, is your drinking at a level where it's under control? Are you drinking to medicate a certain feeling, to numb yourself? Or is it just something that you don't really need anymore, right? Can you replace it with something else and just still feel great in yourself? Because it's not serving you anymore. So, going back to what you were saying about our children, it's so important, I think, just to let them have those feelings and emotions and speak about them, right? And not suppress them. And because, so many, I think we get to adulthood, and if we haven't really worked on our emotional intelligence and the ability to understand that, sometimes we get triggers and these old emotions kick in, being mindful enough to go, hey, why am I feeling that way? It's probably linked to some old pattern that's come along for the ride the whole life, and it's still been just playing out. And so many people don't have the level of awareness, and it just overrides their system, right? And they go straight into jealousy or anxiety or fear, changes their whole physiology, stress hormones, changing the expression of those genes we were talking about. So talking with your children from a young age about feelings and expressing your feelings, and if you're not happy with something, and the language that you use is so important, right? And you just want them to be their authentic self, whatever that is, whatever makes them happy, whatever they gravitate towards certain things. Like my boy has always just been fascinated with nature and fishing. I was a footy head, right? Like, I thought, I'm going to have a son, he's going to be straight into footy. He was not interested at all. Trying to get him to catch a ball or kick a ball. I was like, let's go catch a ball and kick a ball in the park. 5 minutes later, I'm bored. Let's go over and look at the bark on the tree or something like that. Maybe my young girl, there's a pathway for female footy now. She's a bit of a battler. She's got a bit of a fire and rage in her, so she might be a footballer, but you just want them to be their authentic self and to be happy and thrive and know their identity, and not try and be something that they're not, right, to impress their friends or to act a certain way under peer pressure. Because like, I know what it was like growing up and in peer circles and the changes in behavior to fit in and stuff. You just want them to have the fortitude in themselves to go, no, that's not in line with like who I am or my family values. And it's good to identify whether you have family values or personal values as a bit of an anchor to bring it back to, right? Like, so they've got a bit of a reference point to, if a behavior is not in line with that, we bring it back. So we try and keep it simple now. Like, with if the children are saying things that are not kind, I'm like, is that a high vibe word or a low vibe word? If it's low vibe, it's not in line with like the language we want to use towards people as well. Whatever it is that's meaningful for you and your family, to have those conversations with them. And just, if they're the young children, keep it really simple and just start to have those conversations early so they do become ingrained in who they are and in the family unit.
You've touched on two things there that I wanted to highlight, not just for families and our young kids, but for ourselves and for men specifically, is that we don't have to go with the norm of what society talks about. And you talked a bit earlier about that client wanting to get his blood work done with a doctor, and the doctor kind of like, oh, why would we do that? We're not really interested in that. And my wife had something similar. She wanted to get some blood work done, and she said, no, I need like a bigger test to get my blood work done, which the doctor eventually agreed to. But it's that we can go against the grain. We can do things differently. We don't have to be that young footy player, like you were. We can go look at the bark, and we can do it based on our values. And so we can look at what's our identities telling us, what's our well-being, how we're feeling, how we're going. And as men, we can also change this. And this is where this is a great discussion, is that we can change our genetics makeup and how we respond to different life events by being biohackers, for example. And we can change this idea that men have to be the drinking, smoking, tradie, kind of stereotype that doesn't talk about things. We can change this. And yes, kids help us do that. But if we don't have kids, we can still do it by listening to podcasts like this, or talking to our mates about this, or talking to our family about this as well. So this, I guess, would be a good diversion into what Chris Barnes Wellness can do in terms of its coaching program. So maybe there's a guy out there or a girl who's listening to this and going, you know what, maybe it's now time for me to go against the grain, to try something different. How does Chris Barnes Wellness help people get into epigenetics, biohacking, essentially reverse or stop the aging clock? Walk us through it.
Absolutely, mate. So the foundation service that we like to start with people is the genetic blueprint, because that just gives us like 70 pages of genetic information going into all those little intricate areas, like on how you metabolize carbohydrates and your risk factors for diabetes and sensitivities and things that might make eating a certain way really troublesome for you. And most people kind of know some of these, right? Like I have dairy and I get itchy and I bloat out, or I eat wheat and I get itchy skin and bloating or itchy eyes. We've got an idea. This confirms or helps confirm with a bit more precision those areas. And then once we know all those, then how do we integrate those? So we offer coaching services, working one-on-one with people to integrate. Like, so some of these areas are really quite big, right? Like for somebody that has been an insomniac their whole life and they have no understanding why, we look at so many different aspects of sleep, genomics, melatonin production, sleep, circadian rhythm. Like, are you sleeping in line with what your circadian propensity is? Like whether you should be going to bed early and waking up early, or going to bed late and sleeping late. If you're sleeping against those, it's going to start to affect the hormonal balance within your body and ultimately how you feel when you wake up. So we coach through those. There's so many aspects. Like, yes, getting the blueprint and the genetic information is such a foundational point because it helps us identify these areas. But then through diet and lifestyle and working together and feedback, we kind of work in a unit, in a sense, biohacking those areas to bring out optimization, optimal outcomes, better gene expression. And it goes into so many other areas, right? Like hormones for guys in particular, and females, but guys, because I know this is a Mindful Men podcast. When we think about what are some areas that can really affect the way that we feel, our true kind of primal self, hormones, testosterone, low testosterone, big impact on our vitality, our virility, our sex drive, our muscle mass, all the things that kind of make us strong and energetic. So we look at genetic SNPs on those hormone conversions and see whether you're probably at a heightened risk of over-converting your testosterone to estrogen, and then you've got too much estrogen in your body, which is going to change the way you feel, change the way that your chest feels. Like, more rather than a nice defined chest, you might have more fat tissue around like your chest area as a hormonal issue. Or are you not metabolizing estrogens well in your body? Do you need additional support to clear those out? So we go into all those areas. Are you producing too much of the converted testosterone? And then you've got high levels of DHT, which can lead to male pattern baldness or enlarged prostate and things like that. So it gives us a really good idea of what potentially could be happening at some point, whether it's now or if you're not looking after yourself down the line. And then we can match it with blood work to see, okay, you've got these genetic propensities to say that you're probably coded for these conversion issues. Let's actually see with your blood work, is that translating to imbalances? If it is, let's target those now. Let's biohack those. Let's get them in an optimized level so you look better, you feel better, you handle stress better. So neurotransmitters are a big one for guys. As you know, you said that you've had some mental health challenges along the way. I think we all have. And a lot of that is to do with our brain chemistry, right? Like our serotonin, our dopamine, our stress hormones, noradrenaline, epinephrine. And we can look at genetic variants for some people that have higher levels of those neurotransmitters and potentially code for lower levels. And some people burn through them quicker, others don't burn through them quicker and can have higher levels if they're drinking too much coffee or taking pre-workouts. I think back to myself. I look at my genetics now and how I used to be in the gym, smashing down pre-workouts and all those stimulants, right? I wonder why I wasn't feeling really great, because I just wasn't clearing these, they're called catecholamines, so dopamine and epinephrine out of my system efficiently, so they would build up and then I'd get anxiety and agitation and things like that. And the same for other people. If they burn through them too quickly, they can be really low. So low dopamine, hard to get up and get going and things like that. So we identify these potential issues that people can have and then coach diet and lifestyle to correct imbalances and ultimately have you feeling a lot better than you may be feeling, and then taking you to the next level as well. So it's not just one to correct those. How do we take you to the next step in your human evolution, health optimization, to feeling even better than you are? Like you've got your hormone levels back to baseline or back to normal, not out of balance. How do we optimize them now? And then we look at things like biohacking through peptides and other nutraceuticals or longevity supplements that can help slow down the pace of aging. And the pace of aging, I know we didn't touch too much on that, but it is such a crucial one now. Like, you want to identify if you're in a state of accelerated aging. If you're aging for every chronological year more biologically, it's a big risk factor for a lot of chronic disease. And we want to bring that back down. So you're either at 1, so for each year you're just aging normally, but even below that, it makes sense, right? Like you can think, if I'm aging slower than my chronological age, everything's going to be more youthful. Every system in your body, my brain is going to age better. Every cell in your body is going to improve. So, it's a really holistic approach. It's bio-individual, and I want to stress bio-individuality, because every single person has a bio-individual signature that's different to other people. So, we want to just get away from just throwing a one-size-fits-all program at everybody, because there are a lot of risks to doing so, right? Like for some people with our micronutrient genetics, they don't handle folic acid very well. It can become really toxic. And so for people that are having babies and expecting, so dads and obviously and mums, it's very quick to say, just take folic acid. It's really important. And it's what's prescribed to so many people, but some people really don't convert folic acid well. We know from the genetics it can actually bind up to the receptor and stop them from absorbing the methylfolate that they need to prevent like neural tube defects and overall just impact their whole methylation cycle in one little recommendation, right, without knowing the bigger picture. So we identify these kind of things. And I'm just going to quickly jump back to, before you did the intro, into this one about guys that might not be parents yet, but they might be planning on having a family in the future. We now know that like the transgenerational impact of fixing up your environment, your diet, your lifestyle, your drinking habits now, all of that is shaping your methylation status, the epigenetic marks on your genetic material that's getting passed through the sperm. The same with mothers. They should start tidying all this up before conception, right? Like start a year before, start 2 years, 3 years before, it's going to make such a big difference, because we know that if you're doing all the wrong things, these little marks are getting transferred to the genetic material that's inside of the sperm and the eggs, and that's forming our little ones. So if you want to give your children the very best opportunity to have a genome that's going to be so supportive to living the best life, start working on yourself now and tidying up all those areas, especially with this type of service that we offer. It can really just help identify those. And you can kind of identify risk factors before you even have a family, right? Because if your dad has some risk alleles and the mum has those, pretty sure they're going to combine and create a double whammy in certain areas. So it's better to identify those early on so you can preempt it and provide great nutrition, right?
There's always that, like, prevention is better than the cure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Chris, I'm a firm believer of just improving our health and well-being 1% every day. And I think I've increased it by about 100% today after this discussion. You talk about something that's so complex in such a exciting and informative way. So I'm really hopeful that listeners out there are getting a lot of benefit out of this episode today. If people are really lit up and they want to take responsibility and they want to do some work with you, how do they best find you?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. It's been so fun to chat with you. Your insight and stories are so relatable as well, mate. So thank you. Best place to find me is on my website. So it's chrisbarneswellness.com.au. And my socials, Instagram is just at Chris Barnes Wellness. You can connect with me on there. I'll get straight back to you on there as well. You can book in through my website or at Chris Barnes Wellness on Instagram for a free 20-minute discovery call. And we can go through all the stuff like we've been chatting here now, any concerns or areas that you want to identify insights with from your DNA and genetics. And then, if you feel it's a good fit, then we can go from there. But chrisbarneswellness.com.au is the best place. I love chatting about this. So if anyone has any questions from the show, or if they contact you, feel free to send them through and I can answer any questions. It's been really, really fun.
And on your website, you've got some links to your podcast. You want to plug your podcast. You're on a bit of a break from your podcast, but there's a few episodes up there that I was having a look at earlier. Plug your podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I entered the world of podcasting, it must have been 2019. It's called Amplified Wellness. Yeah, all the fun stuff we just spoke about with biohacking. Yeah, you'll have a bit of a treat there. There's about 20 episodes at the moment and many more to come. I'll be jumping back on. So there's thought leaders in the space of biohacking, longevity, so many really, really interesting people from both here in Australia, but also over in the States as well. So check it out. And let me know if you resonate with any of the episodes. And thank you so much for having me on and sharing this conversation. It's something I absolutely love. I love talking and I love having the opportunity to sit down with people and just see like some of their reactions when they start to get a better handle on why they are the way they are based on their genetics, because it's really on point for so many people.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer of knowledge is power, particularly when it comes to our health and well-being. The more knowledge we have about something, the more we can take responsibility, take control and turn into a path that serves us better. In whatever way, whether that's just cutting out drinking, cutting out drugs, it's not smoking anymore, even just fixing up your sleep or exercising more or whatever, finding the thing that works for you. But Chris, one more question I ask every one of my guests. We do talk about some big stuff, and we've talked about a lot of scientific stuff today, and it takes me back to high school biology lessons and science classes that I struggle through. No, but knowledge is power. Right? I'm really excited about this discussion today, but every guest I have on the show, I like to end the show with them plugging something that makes them feel good at the moment. So that could be anything from what you're watching on TV, or something you're listening to, something you're reading, a self-care activity. What are you doing at the moment that's lighting you up that maybe one of our listeners out there could tune into and try out for themselves?
Yeah, definitely, mate. So the thing that's making me feel really good at the moment is just my consistency with listening to some guided affirmation meditations. I've been doing them in the morning, at night, just on Spotify, just various different ones, very much on abundance, right? Like just abundance in life and being thankful and grateful for like all the things that we do have in abundance. And I've really felt a shift for myself in that as well. It's made me feel really good, and just understanding that like it's not always just about money and possessions and stuff. It's just understanding that we do have, like, we live in the best part of the world, have an abundance of beach here and abundance of nature, and just, yeah. So that's making me feel really good. So yeah, if that resonates with anyone and they want to jump on and Spotify, just search for like abundance, affirmation, meditations, and yeah, they can be 10 or 11 minutes. Just do it in the evening or in the morning. There's so many. But yeah, it's making me feel really good.
Yeah. Do you like do it on the floor? Do you sit down? How do you actually do the practice?
Yeah, good question. I find that I need to sit up if I'm doing it, especially in the evening. If I lay down, I go to sleep. It's still fine because it's still going in subconsciously, right? But I tend to sit up, and yeah, in the morning I'll definitely be sitting up. I just find somewhere nice and quiet, normally before the children get up. Sit up 10 or 15 minutes. It can be as little as 5 minutes, right? Like whatever you can dedicate will just change the way that you think about things. And it's all just changing the way that we think about things. And if we change the way that we think about things, we change the way that we feel about things. And then that just changes everything, right? The physiology, the things that we start to see coming into our life. And I've really seen that, right? Like the more I'm doing that work, the more things that just start to pop up, the opportunities that start to pop into your life. So just feeling good, right? Like it's so important to start to feel good more frequently. If we can feel good and be happy, everything else will just start to fall into place, right?
Absolutely. Chris, I'm feeling really great after this conversation. I'm glad that you've come on and shared your insights, and I'm looking forward to the next time I'm on the Gold Coast. I'm bringing down the surfboard and we're going out. But thanks so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed it, and yeah, look forward to following you in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much, Simon. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode, and I hope you got some value from it. If anything triggered your mental health today, please reach out to your support networks. Also, if you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your mates. For more from Mindful Men, you can check us out on Instagram and YouTube, and I'll throw the links to these pages in the show notes below. But until next time, stay mindful.